So we are doing this last session and of the day, just like we did in Amsterdam last time. So we are trying to make it very, very open, starting with a lot of you left. You didn't want the last session. Yeah, I know it's late, but the idea is what you get from this day and what did you like, what you didn't like, and of course from the real world IT point of view, so, the value, the ideas, and so Keith.
Oh wow, I get the start, so that's nice. You know what? The great thing about these multi-infrastructure or multi-point conferences is that you get to dip in areas that you're really weak in. And storage is an area that I'm weak. And Ray's early session about NVMe, NVMe Fabric, and SSDs, knowing the difference between the protocol as it applies to an actual storage device as opposed to a storage fabric. I got a lot of value out of that because I get you get storage vendors coming in and the technology. We say storage doesn't move fast, but when Enrique, when we're not you or Ray and we're watching the industry, you come back and you're like, what happened to just SAS spinning 15K disk? And these types of sessions, I think, are helpful for me. So areas that I'm weak in, like storage, and having an expert like Ray come up and just break down the advantages, disadvantages, where the hype, where we're at, and kind of what Gartner would call the hype cycle, and where we're at for real. I found that helpful.
Go.
So a couple of things, Keith. The real world activity that you bring to these sorts of discussions kinds of levels the whole playing field. And I think it's been really, really exceptional. The other thing that Gabe thing about, it's not the size of the company, but the impact that you bring.
You want me to come up there?
Yep.
That was pretty impressive from my perspective. So, and obviously the other sessions were great as well, but those are the two things that really struck me late in the day.
For me, it's the opportunity I had both last night where I was able to speak to a completely different group because they found out I was in Chicago and they pounced. And then today, were the conversations outside of this room where I was hearing the different projects that people are working on, in other words, and the questions that are being raised, because that puts a perspective on both how people are learning about new technology and what they think about it, those of you that are here and maybe why you're here, and then also the problems that you're trying to solve in the business and where that's really at. Because those of us that end up getting briefed on this stuff all the time and hearing about what the bleeding edge companies are doing, you get very caught up in that. And you forget sometimes that there is what I would call enterprise inertia, that because you kind of go with what you've got and you go with what you know, and you don't step out on that bleeding edge very often. So it's nice to hear where everyone's minds are at as they're dealing with their current problems.
I was out of the room when the question was asked, but I think I'm getting the gist of it. What did I get out of the day?
You can.
So I'm happy to see that people are kind of sick and tired of the software-defined piece and what the definition of software-defined is. But I did take away that I think it's it's a little bit of our way to try to communicate where we want to be, and it's not necessarily about how we get there, but it's our way to say, hey, things need to be more automated, or they need to be more. Our intent is there to do these kind of things, and we've unfortunately call that software defined. But it's more about the intent of where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do versus what the true definition of that term means.
So from my point of view, looking at containers and then networking and different roles in IT, it's incredible because we all want the same thing. So today we covered many different topics, many different areas, but at the end of the day, we are still in the past. We are looking forward, but actually a lot of stuff has to be done. So even in networking, so I really like the presentation. In the companies I met all days in Italy, well, the kind of startups you mentioned, I think they know not even one of them, and not even one of the technology that they are pushing. Okay, they are still standard enterprises, potentially with the software written, 30 years ago, more, and they are struggling to think about how to move from that software that still runs the company, and they want to be more agile, more. So they are bombarded with all this new agility, but actually they struggle. And I don't know if here in the audience you have the real world problem, okay? And if you see that all these companies are trying to do that, but actually then they come back home and they say, okay, where do I start? And that's the real problem today, because technology is ready. If you are in a greenfield, okay, maybe. And but if you have a brownfield, it's really, really tough. I don't know your opinion, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I like the greenfield brownfield example is really is good because if you are starting out in a greenfield environment, there's a lot of different ways that things could be done. However, if you're trying to fit the square peg through the round hole with the brownfield environment, where you're trying to make technologies that are up and coming and emerging technologies fit into an environment that necessarily wasn't built or designed to handle that, which is a lot of the challenges that folks, I think, are having in their environments today. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I would want to do in infrastructure, right? So if I go back into the days whenever I was the enterprise guy, and Gabe and I worked together many, many years, and these are a lot of the problems that we faced literally on a daily basis. You'd go into a conference and you'd hear about automation and vCloud and Hyper-V and all these different SSD and all these different emerging technologies, and then you come back and try to figure out a way to make that fit into your environment where it doesn't necessarily make business sense, because you're not trying to fix a business problem, you're trying to just implement a technology. Whereas if folks focus on what business problem, what business objective am I trying to solve with these different areas of technology, I think that they could potentially be more successful in the way that things get implemented into the environment. That's kind of my take on that. Anybody else?
So I was on the plane yesterday and was reading an article about from a developer actually who works for an unnamed company up in the Silicon Valley, and the article talked about this concept of no ops, right? And the first thing that I thought this morning, as I'm sitting here and listening to a very detailed presentation about storage technology that I just don't see because I look at the world through my myopic view of what I do, and getting my team to see that same vision. It hit me that this concept of no ops and these terms that are thrown around, and it was just echoed throughout the day, is that when you come to something like this and you hear all of these different perspectives, especially today, I mean, you go to different conferences and it's the same thing, like Flash Memory Summit, it might be all flash memory. Or you go to DockerCon and it's all containers. You pick up some nuances, and you can almost, if you can apply it, all these technologies and some of these things that are happening the correct way, if you can become that Dr. Phil, it almost kind of rounds up to your career move, and now you're providing more value back to the company, and you're building things for yourself. So I thought it was kind of a nice, holistic view of what's happening in enterprise IT.
So it's interesting that all the IT organization like to get rid of the infrastructure, and infrastructure-less infrastructure. I don't know if it's... Yeah? This is what... But when you talk with this, even hyperconvergence, it's all about get rid of the complexity, and but actually they are hiding it under the rug. It's
becoming more complex.
Yeah, it's becoming much more complex and actually less efficient. At the end of the day, you are paying much more than you paid last year, because you are just for this simplification layer that you put on top. You actually don't get the best performance or the best capacity or the best whatever. So I would like to see an infrastructure-less world, but actually it's quite impossible at the moment. I don't know. It's and the more I talk with end users, and the more they have an infrastructure problem now.
So I find it interesting that even with the conversation that VMware is having with its VMware Cloud on AWS, the desire is to get away from the racking and stacking of it. But I think enterprises are becoming more realistic. I think that's a result of reality, is that we're not going to, SAP isn't going anywhere. Exchange for some organizations isn't going to go anywhere. These big monolithic applications aren't going to go anywhere. And they're going to be a major part of not just our data centers, but the way that we do business. And you think about something like SAP, it operates our business, our manufacturing processes, our HR, paying our vendors, getting paid. We're not going to move we might put some stuff around that gravity, but we're not going to move that gravity away from the infrastructure. But the problem that I gave earlier of, just the stupid racks don't fit in the rail, those problems don't add much business. Solving those problems don't add much business value. And it's the struggle to get away from that level of infrastructure to this model where we can continue to run the applications that we do in a cost-effective way, and in a model that's complementary to these cloud-native apps.
Has anybody read the Phoenix Project?
Oh yes.
Awesome. If you haven't, read it. It's a great book. But they talk about the theory of constraints, and I totally agree with you that the way that we need to approach this is, it's not taking one size and making it fit all. It's let's look at the entire end-to-end, all of the workflows, the entire IT supply chain, and remove the constraints, right? So clearly making sure that your rails fit into the rack. If that becomes a problem, we don't want to hold up the deployment of applications, right? And it's ridiculous it happens today. I turned to Ethan, I said, is this 1992, 93? Do I need to get a screwdriver out to put a rail kit in a rack still, right? I don't know. I haven't been in a data center for about 4 years doing that. So, but yeah, removing that constraint, I think it's incredibly important.
Good. And so, do you have a comments or whatever about the day? So, what did you get today? So, compared to what you see on your day-to-day job from these guys. So, all the presentations, some of them really, I think about Chris, containers, and who knows about containers? 70% of the ants up, and then who use it? Half of the room, and then down to one in production, right? And it's it is the same kind of percentage that we got in Amsterdam a few weeks ago. So actually, in this case, Europe is not the third world of IT. We are pretty much aligned.
No, I think you're ahead.
But the problem is the same. So we are talking a container is stealing the scene for 2 years now. 3 years now.
It's the new OpenStack.
Huh?
It's the new OpenStack.
It's the new OpenStack from this point of view. Now we are not talking about OpenStack anymore, but actually we are seeing real-world production systems.
Yeah, you're talking about
more than in the past, at least.
Yeah, my opinion is you're talking about the things that OpenStack was meant to be used for, which is a set of APIs that allows you to set quotas and consume compute resources on premise like you can with Amazon. When the OpenStack community gets their heads together and does things the right way, you're going to see way more than just compute and network and object storage and block storage. There's going to be you've got database as a service and a lot more stuff that can be used and consumed. That it should be what Amazon is doing. That's where we should go, right? So I think containers are getting there the same way. Orchestration clearly is a challenge. It was a challenge a year ago. It's getting better, but yeah, it eventually it'll fade away and become a commodity like everything else.
Good. And what about the cloud now? Because we didn't mention too many times about today public cloud, and some vendors talk all the time about the fact that the public cloud, especially Amazon, will kill everything else. Okay, we are going all there, and no more. Yeah, less of these vendors, but actually it's still there. No? And you see if you read the statistics, if you read the surveys, like private clouds are growing more than public clouds in adoption. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, you can't push everything into public cloud and expect it to be processed as quickly as you need it all the time. And that we can talk about security and all those arguments that have gone on for a long time, but I think the bigger issue is you can't just shove all that data up into the cloud and then process it as quickly as you need. In many cases, you still need local computing. Some of that's going to be IoT. They're talking about fog computing. Apparently, that's actually a thing because I got a briefing from a company called Foghorn that's what they do. They make it so you can process all your IoT data local. Except that I don't think IoT is going to affect most enterprises all that much. So it's interesting, but it's more of a niche. Yeah, we'll see. But no, it makes much more sense to me that you'd have private cloud for a lot of things. You have the ease and efficiency of standing up workloads quickly in that model, and have some traffic that is up in the cloud that can be up there because you don't need it locally. It doesn't have to be local. You can deal with the latency. You can deal with maybe the cost makes sense. Maybe the amount of storage that you're putting up there works. You're not moving petabytes of data up into the cloud, et cetera. But it's going to be a hybrid world in my mind, not the public cloud's going to eat everything.
So you know what, for as far as I can see, so a lot of organizations, so not only enterprises, are adopting public cloud when it's time to do something new. They don't have an idea of the resources needed, the time to develop the application, and actually, so when the application grows, and after a while you have an idea what is going to happen, and you migrate everything back. And I saw this process, and the biggest pain is that compatibility, because they didn't thought about moving back the application. But actually, the economics make sense. So they need to rewrite also the API they're using. So all this AWS or Azure or whatever compatibility is now needed, because if your developer is using something that is just AWS, you are in a problem. And I see more and more also. In Italy, at least, okay. So we are talking about smaller organization, not using AWS services, but they are building their own, NoSQL cluster using VMs. It's inefficient from the Amazon point of view because you pay more at the end of the day, but you can move everything wherever you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's, from my perspective, the cloud is there, and a lot of the new development activity, greenfield activity, is starting and staying in the cloud until it gets to a point where it's so expensive that they want to move out. I mean, Netflix was a big player. They had, hundreds of millions of dollars of Amazon support service, and they were just spending out there, and they could save, a vast majority of that by moving their stuff in-house, and they did. It's a struggle, yes, and you've got to have the compatibility. You got to understand how to get there. But the challenge today, and it kind of reminds me of PCs and workstations and server client stuff, where the development starts to go is where the storage starts to go. I mean, and if you're going to start all this development in the cloud, it's just more and more painful to pull it out. It just gets more and more painful.
Yeah, one of the areas that I'm really keeping my eye on is this serverless piece. I hate
serverless.
So let's call it
function.
Yeah, let's call it event-driven compute, or
That's much better.
yeah, event-driven compute. I think
Done by server.
yeah, which is done by.
There'll always be a server somewhere.
Enrique, you hit on a really great point that we built these services in the cloud. We get addicted to the cloud API, and we do it the way that AWS, Azure, whoever had it designed in their public space, and then we pull it back in, and there's expense and cost associated with pulling it in-house. We have to rejigger the API. Sure, we can move from AWS to OpenStack, and it works well, but this event-driven compute movement is interesting in the sense that there's not an awful lot of equivalence in the private cloud or in the private data center. There's
It's starting.
It's starting.
Yeah.
But if you build a really big service, I mean, the scale that Amazon is pushing Lambda, it's hard to replicate that internally today. So that's just one of those areas as IBM with their Blue Mix, and even IBM with Blue Mix isn't really talking about putting that on premises and allowing you to manage it yourself. They're saying, hey, it's here, it's open source, but it's really tough to manage and it's really tough to implement.
but
so that's really
think
that's
about
interesting
the-
to add earlier.
So this is a niche of a niche. So serverless is beyond containers, beyond anything else. And I think that we are seeing a lot of interest for this kind of technology. And I can mention at least 4 or 5 startups working on this stuff. And they have products in production. Okay. So we can argue that they are startups, they are small, they are really advanced, they do very well that kind of thing, but then the rest of their storage product is not as good as it should be. Okay, they are selling one feature. So even Data Domain, when started, was there selling one feature, okay? And so actually, and even all the old Flash guys at the beginning, they were selling one feature. Then they got better or died. And
Or dying.
Or dying, yeah, okay. I am not, I don't want to mention any.
No names. They may want to sponsor the show one day.
Yeah, it's too late. But okay. No, don't take that route. Okay. So the problem is there is a demand, and I think that we will have many more products to do that. Very good also in on premises. Just it's a niche.
Economy of scale.
So,
Scale from point of land on property.
It's just code, right? I mean, this concept it's not something we've never done before, right? I mean, to create an API in Go is like 2 lines, right? I mean, it's ridiculously simple. So, but to do it at scale and to have everything buckled together where you can say, here's how I can put audit and control and compliance around S3, consume something out of S3, run some function on it, drop in 3 versions of a JPEG and a PNG file, thumbnails. We can do that. It's just not easy to put all the pieces together. But I guess my commentary on the cloud, because we're moving a lot of folks into the cloud. We're in phase 2 now. Right? So phase 1 was lift and shift. I mean, this was the easy stuff to get there. The phase 2 piece is that we see is these are new applications that are driving business, that the business wants to talk to their customers, but it's consuming information that's coming out of the on-premise infrastructure and mainframes and things that MQ series in front of mainframes. The integration points for that are quite a bit more difficult to put together. But the thing that we find ourselves talking about is a cloud-first approach or best-of-breed approach. Mm-hmm. And I think that back to why you do something in the cloud, where you're going into the cloud, and how you're consuming the cloud, that's a huge piece to the discussion of what are the cost benefits and how you start putting together the total cost of ownership for the cloud experience, because it definitely changes the game, like running Elastic on your own versus using Amazon's service.
Yeah, but
so one of the questions that I've got from today, actually your session today, Chris, was how much of what's going on in our enterprise that we're not aware of, the development that's going on laptops, even looking at Docker Swarm and thinking, Docker Swarm has made it simple enough that developers can create a Docker cluster in their own little private environment. And are we...
And I think I've put a Docker cluster in my home.
It's really simple. I mean,
It's dead easy.
It's dead easy. But it's dead easy to develop upon.
Raspberries.
How far are we from enterprise infrastructure groups ready to support production-ready applications when the developer goes to the CIO and says, look at this cool thing I built on my laptop using all these components we just need to expand out into our infrastructure. Here, go have the infrastructure, and he sells it, and then we have to implement it and operate it.
it's not already happening.
There's a question. Is there
forever?
I know it's not happening. I don't think that's happening in production. It's happening on the back end. And is there going to be an avalanche? I like other people's opinions. Is there going to be an avalanche of that stuff coming to production at some point?
Yeah, but sorry, I don't know if it works that way here in US, but many times I found people talking directly to the owner of the company, not even the CIO. The owner of the company say, "Oh, I bought this, and I want this to run my organization, my business unit now." And because they are the VP or whatever, the sales leader, and the owner says, "Oh yes," and then they call the IT guy and they say, "You have to implement this, and you can do whatever you want. It doesn't work. It's a problem. It goes, against everything else we are doing." And they say, "We don't care. We need this."
Yeah.
So this is the same thing. Is the developer will have more power in the organization in the future? Yes, but I don't think it changes a lot the way we see things. From the infrastructure point of view.
So I'll just make one quick comment on that. So we have a customer that is a $500 million manufacturer. They make teeth. So if you're in the United States, you probably have if you have a crown or you have an implant, it's probably from these guys. A year and a half ago, when we started working with them, the CEO of the company, who's 70 years old, said, "I don't care about technology. I have no idea what that stuff means. And just make sure that the Haas machines, the CNC machines, are running 24/7, and the people are boxing up teeth and doing the scanning." They've moved from, you mentioned Amazon Echo and Alexa and the services. In that year, the CEO now goes into a meeting with the technology team and the development team, and everything he asks on every project is there an API, because they understand that their business needs to be programmable. They've become a software company. They're shipping Echoes to all of their customers. You got to say, "Echo, play music. Echo, reorder this. Echo, schedule a pickup." And yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah, it really is the case. Hey, can you set up an appointment? Right? They've gotten to the point where they're using technologies like Neo4j and graph databases to solve for some problems, routing problems, and things that used to take human capital, and now they're fixing. So, I guess the comment I'm making is, there's an avalanche coming. Companies are going to recognize that they're going to become software companies at some way, shape, or form. That's what we firmly believe. But the complexities are not going to be completely removed. Their IT team, we still did. I mentioned Dr. Phil. We played Dr. Phil when we first started working with them. You had IT on one side of the table and the development team on the other side of the table. And they did not talk to each other. A couple of them didn't even look at each other. It was really bad. But the things that the dev team couldn't solve for, the IT team could. Right? So they were like, "Oh, I get queue depth for switches. I understand this concept of microbursting." The dev team's like, "I don't know what the hell that means." But it's important when you talk about distributed services. So avalanche coming, but there's still lots of room for us and what's going on in the industry.
There's still a lot of friction in this organization. Now, I remember the first time I was in a company and there was this FCOE initiative now. And we got the storage team and the networking team working on this new switch to understand it. It was not about the technology. It was just the fact that they were talking two different languages. So they didn't understand each other. And the project failed. Was a good idea. Okay, still is a good idea. We are getting there, not with FCOE, with iSCSI probably, with other protocols probably, but actually. They don't talk to each other. Now that we want the invisible infrastructure, the infrastructure-less infrastructure, now something is happening. But actually, you are a network guy. How many FCOE implementation do you see in the field?
Not many.
Because most of the time it's just dev and ops don't talk to each other in the real world. I'm not talking in the Silicon Valley. Yeah, they are all DevOps guys there. But if you look in
Not all of them.
Yeah, they're
We don't all walk like that either.
And
That's the new poll for DevOps.
I'm gonna pick that one up.
no, they're the nice and fancy guys. They do a lot of. but if you go in the field and you start to talk with the dev and the ops, and actually the dev don't use they don't know NoSQL. They know Microsoft SQL. And you talk about NoSQL, you can do that. Well, can I run select asterisk from that table? Because I do that. And you say, you can do that. Now you have to be smarter. You can select everything from that table, right? But they are still doing select asterisk from a single table, full table scans. And it doesn't work. Put more RAM. Put more, more resources. I was in a meeting some time ago with a customer, and he had these blades, nice blades, 180 gigabyte each. So the application doesn't work. What can you do? Oh, try more RAM. Okay. Oh, it works better. Can you try more? Oh, it works better. So they reach like 1 terabyte of RAM, something absurd. Yeah. Oh, this is nice. Yeah, see the bill. Try it and rewrite your application. No, because this is the technology that I know. So even the change in these people is hard. Mm-hmm. They think they know the best technology. They don't want to change. So they don't speak to each other. They don't want to change. But even the infrastructure guys, many times. And it's I don't know, it's tough. It's not only, it's dev and ops.
It's fun.
It's fun, yeah, it's fun. When you try to convince them that there is something new, something better, it doesn't take a lot to change the way they do stuff. But
one thing I picked up on today is we're all kind of looking at this from different perspectives on the technology and different personality perspectives and experience. And the theme that's coming out for me is just kind of flexibility, because you might have a big infrastructure, you might not want it, but you have it, and you might see something new that could be better, but you don't, it's not binary, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to evolve, and as you evolve, if you can maintain that flexibility, you'll be able to do more of what's working for you, and it might be you can give more weight to the person that's working for you, that's doing the right thing, or the piece of your infrastructure that's working, or if we get to the point where you can ignore your infrastructure, which way to coordinate things is working the best, and you have all these choices. Does one of them emerge as the better one? So I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how to maintain flexibility, but if you're really keeping an eye on what you've got going on, you're going to see it, right? And so then you can kind of adapt and stay agile. So
okay, stay agile. I don't know, because sometimes
I tried to
it's
say all
really
that
tough.
with no buzzwords in it.
That's pretty good. No, that's pretty good.
Agile, like
That's DevOps.
I can't tell the difference between DevOps and Agile.
Agile's got hands up. I think DevOps is more hands down.
Yeah.
No, sometimes it's really tough, even to be agile, because I wrote an article a few weeks ago talking about the fact that we are, all this agile thing, DevOps thing, is really cool. It's not always, the right way to go. And because, like in storage, for example, sometimes I talk to these new startups in the storage realm. We don't come from storage. This is why we are cool, because we are rethinking everything from the beginning, and and we are agile. We give you a new version of the product every 2 weeks. They say, what? Yeah, and every time I heard about this, I said, oh, how can you do that? So
Ask them how much they tested it.
Yeah? Sorry?
This is story.
Ask them how much they tested it before they
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? So, and sometimes you say, we can put a new version of the product and something goes wrong, you do rollback. Think about you have 1 petabyte of data, and the new version of the product corrupts your data. You can do rollback about the operating system. So
there's always a
then try to pull back the backups.
there's always a balance between how much you want to validate the product and how much you want to try to get functionality out. So if you want more functionality, you have to some extent automate the validation, automate the deployment. This whole DevOps thing is trying to drive automation through all that process. There are companies out there that are doing 2-week cycles on their storage products, right? Of all things. I come from a company that did an 18-month cycle on a storage product. That was what our life was, and we were lucky to get 9-month update, maintenance updates out. But The world is what it is. So if it takes 2 weeks to get the product out, they could have been validating it for a month. They're in this process where they're doing parallel development activities constantly. I don't know.
No, you can also do a lot of, your 18 months of test could be,
Well, 18 months.
10,000 VMs in Amazon doing testing everything. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but it's really, really expensive. Okay, and at the same time, I don't know if it's enough. Because sometimes
the promise of Agile is to be able to respond to the market as quickly as possible with functionality that's working and is
I like
something,
it. In
and
my
something
Apple,
that customer wants.
in
right?
my iPhone, I don't have an iPhone. In my phone,
Yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Receiving updates all the time, it's really nice. A new feature.
As long as they continue to work.
Yeah, but again, it's a device, okay, to access. Now, or at least for me, I don't have important data on my phone. It's Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive. I think I have all of them. And
Not everyone.
no, just because you can get 1 terabyte free there. So you use all of them. Huh?
Doing storage arbitration here.
And a file system. Yeah, I was about to say you got a file system on top, like.
But again, I don't have. It's only a copy of my data, so I can lose my phone. I go in a shop, I buy a new one. 30 minutes, I'm online. You can do that with your data, okay?
Yeah.
You can even let me say that I don't know, the network guy will hate me, but you can do that even on a router, okay? If you lose router, sorry.
UK English, I guess.
No. Yeah, I came from Italy, so. So you can do that potentially on a networking equipment, because if you lose the connection, okay, you don't lose the data. Actually, you can corrupt everything that passes in that thing, but you have error correction here and there. You have a lot of stuff that can prevent losing data. Okay, it's a disruption for the service. You don't lose data. But what happens if you lose your array? If you write something, it says you okay, and then it doesn't come back.
Does anybody remember BlueArc?
Yeah.
Yes.
So didn't they have a problem in Silicon? In one of the ASICs that was flipping bits and causing
They're
data
not the
corruption?
only company that's had problems in Silicon and losing bits and doing those sorts of things. But you survive by fixing those problems as quickly as they come up, and you move on.
And ship another controller.
You either ship another controller or a little wire on top of the controller to fix a little bit. Or it's all done in software, man.
You send a soldering kit with.
They send you the soldering kit, actually.
So I think the interesting thing is, like, we get back to, without using the word software defined, which I'm going to use software defined, can you fix those problems more quickly? And can you be doing the testing cycles more rapidly and using hyper feedback in the testing?
By using commodity hardware and software defined solutions, you can do a lot of that stuff. The fixes are obviously only software, but the challenges are, with hardware functionality, you can often get some benefit from, if you look at 3D Crosspoint, the thing is, 10 times the speed of SSDs. Do you want that? Do you need that? And are you willing to pay for that? And you're not going to get that in software. Those are the real world things. You can do a lot in software, but you can't do it all.
Yeah. Also, we are living in a world even with the mobile devices, everything is in beta all the time, right? So think about Siri from Apple, no? So 2-3 years in beta, and we paid for that feature, right? So just when they presented it, this is Siri, it's great, it's in beta, but you're paying for it because we are selling it, right? It's not on top. No. And everything. Google Gmail was in beta for years, and everything in Google is beta, okay? And isn't it true?
Except for search, that's that's production.
Yeah, this was just production because they are making a lot of money out of it.
Everything else, everything else.
But again, you can't have some sort of systems in beta. You can't. You just can't. You can't trust them, and that's the difference. The only difference. But I like Google services. As I said, I have a Google Drive also because I got a few gigabytes free. But I think it's in beta. Okay, I think it's time to wrap up. So I hope you enjoyed also this last session. You are still looking at me very bad for the thing of the router. No? Okay.
No, We're waiting for the GIF to come out with you doing the DevOps.
That's it.
The DevOps.
That's on video.
We're gonna video.
Yeah, this is on video. I will ask Ben to put the DevOps thing.
DevOps thing.
That's okay. Thank you very much to all of you for the day. I hope you liked it. And we have one more thing. Is the evaluation? This is the evaluation, the feedback form. Please give us the feedback form if you want to participate in the raffle. Even if you don't want, but we need it. And that's it. So give me the feedback forms. Our nice guy over there will pass on with the sunglasses. Yeah, So he came here with this allergy, and he spent the day the morning in a clinic. Which is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
EpiPen.
But what's that? Do you have also the other one in the back there?
I've got the other ones back there.
Okay.
Not everybody's ready.
Okay, good.
Well, Enrico and Arjan, thanks for putting this event together.
Thank you.